What's up, everybody? It's your boy Mark B, and you are listening to another episode of the Man Listen Show. Before we get started, let's go ahead and hear a few words from our sponsor.
Title Boxing Club of Rock Hill is proud to be a sponsor of the Man Listen Show. Title Boxing Club Rock Hill offers dynamic boxing and kickboxing classes for all. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TBC Rock Hill.
The Man Listen Show is also brought to you by Conversate With Us Radio. Conversate With Us Radio, your urban radio show podcast. A fun place to look for advice and a different perspective on life, love, relationships, sports, and politics. One conversation at a time. You can find us on Facebook at Conversate With Us Radio and on Instagram at Conversate With Us. Don't forget to capitalize the V in Conversate. All right, we're back. Let me go ahead and introduce everybody. C, how are you doing?
Hey, what's good?
Everything's good. Lab, what's up, brother?
What's going on, man? I'm doing all right. How about you?
Doing well, man. Appreciate you asking. And Arika, how are you?
I'm good. Feeling old, but I'm good.
Hey, it's like the old people say, keep waking up in the morning. You know what I mean?
Right.
Getting old is better than the alternative.
Right.
It's better than the alternative. So
Only one other option.
right.
Right.
All right. Absolutely. So today we have a very melancholy subject. We're talking about our brother Nipsey Hussle. In case anybody isn't aware, I can't imagine nobody not knowing what happened. Nipsey Hussle was murdered in front of his store, the Marathon store in his neighborhood. The person who allegedly took Nipsey Hussle's life was a man known as Eric Holder. Law enforcement was able to arrest him today and bring him into custody so that he can stand accused for murdering Nipsey Hussle. It's a very sad situation because Nipsey was known not only for his rap skills, but he was much bigger than rap. He did a lot for the community. He did a lot for his own community, but also the black community as a whole in terms of motivating black people to invest in business, invest in technology, and it really is a massive loss to the black community, the loss of this brother's life. So we're going to talk about Nipsey Hussle, his murder, and what that means for black people and how we go forward, in light of this terrible situation. So just going to start off with the crew, with a few questions. What was your initial reaction to the news when you heard about Nipsey being shot and later on dying from the gunshot wound?
My initial reaction was this might be like the biggest loss to the culture after Tupac. Like, I know you definitely can't compare their music, but just as far as what they were trying to do, in the community, I think that was like he's probably the next closest thing coming up next to Tupac. And at first I kind of thought maybe the government might be behind it. Not really so much because of the Dr. CB thing and the whole him curing AIDS and doing the documentary, but I just thought because he was just he was too powerful and he was too positive at the same time. Just like we talked about last show, I think Lab might have said it. Like those are typically the people that we lose the earliest that the government finds a way to take out.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely, I agree with you on that because when you look at a lot of the civil rights leaders that made a difference in the community, a lot of them died young and they died due to gun violence. And for example, we use Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton out of Chicago. This brother, he more so reminded me of Nipsey Hussle out of everybody because he was with the people. Fred Hampton was about let me educate the people. Well, I'm not just trying to lead you. I want to educate you politically. I want to educate you economically so that I don't free you from the oppressor that you have right now, and then you follow me, and then I become your next oppressor. I want everybody to be empowered. And I think when I look at Nipsey, I put him along that line with, brother Fred Hampton. And when you look at the history of Fred Hampton, he was killed by the Chicago police, but he was set up by somebody who he considered to be a friend. Marcus Garvey, he was doing a lot of things in the black community in Harlem, and the people that there were so many people within his circle that were informing on him and trying to bring him down. So I think people were right to be skeptical about the reason why um, Nipsey was murdered, and for them to jump to the conclusion that it was because of the his plans to do the Dr. Sebi documentary. I don't think it was far fetched, and there were a lot of people that kind of got on their high horse and were dogging people out for doing that. But you don't. My response to that is you don't know. You don't know if this guy murdered Nipsey because he was jealous or if it was he was paid to do so. Nobody knows. So who are you to say people are wrong?
I think that the first person that came to mind when this happened was Fred Hampton, also, and not because when I think of Fred Hampton, I think of he was bridging the gap between so many different groups, the African American community, the poor white community, so many other people. But like you said, he had like an overall mission of unity that would overthrow the 1%. And that was dangerous to the government and to the 1%. And that's why I feel like he was targeted. And I feel like the same thing with Nipsey is that he was reaching too many people and he was spreading like a great message. And so I actually did not know too much about his music, but I know more about what he was doing in the community and how he was represented and respected in the Black community than anything else. And I also feel that it's sad to me to see how many people couldn't wait to attack their fellow online community about believing that this could be some type of conspiracy. It's not like COINTELPRO just ended one day. They just changed the name. Just like slavery didn't end one day. They just changed the name to the industrial prison complex. Just because we don't know what the current mission of the government is doesn't mean that there isn't one. And if there's people out there doing things to advance a certain community that they want to see continuously undermined, I think it's fair, like you said, to believe that it could be initiated. This guy was a known snitch. So it's not a jump to go from a known snitch to a paid killer from the government. That's not a jump to me.
No,
But I have like,
it's
Good point.
yeah.
it's definitely not because if we both talk about Fred Hampton. I don't know the name of the guy who was the rat. I won't call him an informant because that's like too kind of a name. The rat
Mm.
who gave the information to the police so that Fred Hampton could be assassinated, but he lived a life just like he was, like a rat. He ended up dying in some horrible fashion because of what he did. So, like you said, if the rumors are that Nipsey confronted this guy about possibly being a snitch, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. But you're right; it's not a leap of logic to say this guy could be someone used to take out somebody who was so powerful for the community. I just think about how many people were affected by his death. Not just his woman, Lauren London, not just his children, not just his mother, his father, but think about all of the jobs that he was bringing to the community. Think about all the people who looked up to him and were inspired by him that this coward just took from everybody. So, Lab, I'm going to go ahead and bring you in, man. I mean, what do you think about, what was your initial reaction to Nipsey being murdered in the way that he was?
Similar to everybody, really. It was another one that we lost, too young. And it's something that, unfortunately, we're all too familiar with in the Black community. And it really has got to the point where, you're like, okay, time to pack up and move on. And we kind of, are kind of accustomed to it, used to seeing it happen. So our influential figures And I think another thing nobody said yet when you talk about the conspiracy theory and things like that, this is L.A. This is the LAPD, man, and you know their history with black folk and the way they lied and covered up and abused their power in so many instances in Los Angeles. And you think about that aspect of it as well. Even though they come out today, like you say, and say this guy did this, I don't know, you know, and I can't 100% trust the Los Angeles Police Department just because of history that of everything that's happened there. But I also think it kind of does relate to last week's episode where we talk about do people or do our celebrities owe the community something? And I think it kind of highlights, I don't know if people are consciously making a decision not to, you know, give back because they think something like this would happen or something like that. But, you know, I do think that there is a segment of the population, a segment of celebrities and non-celebrities as well that choose to abandon the communities that they were raised in or brought up in, and because they don't want to deal with potential issues with their own community. I saw an interview where Nipsey was talking about this exact same thing, talking about people in his neighborhood who why they may feel jealous of him because basically we were dealt the same cards. We were on the same block. We did the same thing, but I became successful. And so that makes you feel some type of way about your own self because you're looking at yourself in the mirror like, man, me and Nipsey was on these same streets. We did the exact same thing. He must have something inside him that I don't have in me. And so it kind of brings jealousy and hatred and things like that. And it's really sad. It really is.
Yeah, and that's a good question, you know, to pose to everybody else. You know, what does this do for black celebrities, black leaders, or let's just say, you know, people who are quote unquote uh, somewhat affluent that have more resources than other people, and we charge them about leaving the community, leaving the hood, not giving back. What does this say to those people? Will it be a discouragement to them, or should we look at it in a different way? What do you think?
I think it should be actually the totally opposite of discouragement. I think it should be inspirational, really, for other people to see the impact that he's had, and honestly, it can be kind of people can do it selfishly, but they can be like, man, I can make a difference. I can have an impact. I can be beloved in my community by investing and things like that. You know, not saying you have to. He You don't necessarily have to live there per se. A lot of people will, you know, that better, but just being there, investment wise, time wise, things like that. I think it should be an inspiration for people, and not just celebrities. For us, you know, if we have communities that we come from or that we're familiar with that we can give back, preferably financially, you know, whether as supporting black-owned businesses or some startup or something like that. Anything like that, I think it should be inspiration.
See,
I think it's going to make people a little leery, and they'll probably, beef up security a little bit. And, it's sad to say, but I honestly think Nipsey was getting to the point where he was too big to kind of hang down there in the grind in the hood day in and day out. I wish he would have had a team that he trusted enough to kind of run the day-to-day operations. He could have still been the brains behind everything, and of course, he'd have still been helping make most of the financial decisions and the financial backing. But I just don't think he should have been really down there on Crenshaw, from the time the store opens to the time the store ends. It's sad that people are going to have to make that decision, but I mean, it's just kind of it is what it is. I mean, this man was just nominated for a Grammy. How many people are nominated for a Grammy and then go back and hang at the same block that they grew up in and actually, help run a store, help run the, storefronts and build businesses?
you
But I
know,
mean, I can't fault him for it.
well, actually, and you know, you never want to speak in negative terms about the dead, especially when it's, still so fresh. But I was talking about this with a friend of ours, and I said Nipsey made a strategic error. He was too
Mhm.
valuable to the community, to his family, to be on the front lines like he was. I mean, in the movies you see Braveheart, you see, the generals like in Lord of the Rings fighting with the infantry, but that's not how it really works. The generals and
No.
everybody, they come up with the strategy from behind the lines, and you have foot soldiers that are doing the work that needs to be done to advance the cause. And I think that Nipsey should have had some of those layers of protection around him to keep him away from a person like this, a person like Eric Holder who took his life. Like the rumor is that Nipsey confronted this guy about being a snitch, and the guy was upset about that, and he decided to come and take Nipsey's life. There's no reason why Nipsey should have been the person having that conversation. That guy should not have had access to Nipsey. If Nipsey
Right.
somehow felt that this guy was a snitch, then there are ways that he could have, kept this guy from being around his network, his business. It didn't have to be where I'm going to be the person to confront him, because we see what happened. That there shouldn't have been that level of access to Nipsey, and I hate it because it was an error, and it was an error that cost his life.
I think it's an inspiration because we got to keep doing the work. And we need to keep doing the work to the point that there's so many of us that you can't pick out who on the front line you should take out. Whether it's the government, whether it's people on the street from your own neighborhood, there should be so many people doing such good work in the black community that you can't even pick one person to take out. And I think it's sad, like you said, no, they shouldn't have been able to have access to him, but I live according to the ideology that we're given the time that we're given. And the idea is not to live forever, it's to live well. And I believe he lived well. And he impacted more people than I've impacted in the time that I've been given here in less time. So I think that the fact that he's lived so well and impacted so many people, and to read so many stories about people listening to his music to get through hard, that made me feel a certain type of way because I hadn't listened to his music. I was told to listen to his music by people that we know that were cool with, but I hadn't gotten around to it. And so to read so many people say that music got me through this hard time, that music encouraged me to keep going when I didn't have the strength to keep going or whatever, what have you. He lived well. He lived well. Um, he showed us how to be a great father, even though he wasn't married to Lauren London. I feel like he was a great role model to the black community as far as a father figure, husband figure. He gave a great example that a lot of people have latched onto, and I think that's why people are comparing him to how it felt to lose Tupac, because we felt like when we lost Tupac, even though sometimes he went on his rants, he spoke the truth in the heart and he talked about the hard times that it was that we went through. We all felt that, and I felt like he was touching so many people on a different level, and that was helping people get through their struggle. I think that we can all say what we could have done better. Hindsight is 2020, but he lived well, and that's the most respectable thing you can do. And so
Yeah, um,
I respect it.
I have nothing but respect for Brother Nipsey. I mean, we always share the story about how Lav and I went to LA and bought some fake tickets and ended up getting scammed, getting
Nipsey
scammed.
was at that game too. He was
Yeah,
front row at that game.
well, I'm sure he was. I'm sure he was, because that was a hot game. Before LeBron joined the Lakers, he was playing against them. But the one thing that I remember about that trip, and outside of us getting scammed, we had a great time on that trip. The soundtrack for that trip
It was
was
that Nipsey.
was
The
Nipsey's
victory lap.
that victory lap,
It
and
show
and
that.
And
Yep.
what
Hmm.
was crazy about it was Nipsey represented West Coast music, but most people look at West Coast music and you look at, okay, there's a style. You have like the NWA, the DJ Quick, and everybody else. There's a certain flavor that the West Coast has to their music. What's not normally associated with West Coast music is brothers dropping knowledge. And Nipsey, and I'm not trying to say that, and I don't want to end up like Rasheed Wallace and have somebody making a diss track against me, but I'm just saying Nipsey more so
Right.
than most rappers outside of the backpackers like Souls of Mischief and guys like that. But for like what I consider a mainstream artist, and he only had really like one like was Victory Lap his like
One studio album,
yeah, Victory Lap.
first
Other than
studio
that, he
album.
had like several mixtapes. Um,
Hmm.
he was dropping knowledge for brothers, and the music went hard. And it's he's bigger than rap, but I don't think we need to overlook how much talent that man had and how he used that talent to not only be a perfect role model towards the community, but to also his peers to show them, hey, yes, I was able to get success, gain resources, gain finances from rap, but I'm also reinvesting into the community for the people that support me. I mean, how many people do we know? I mean, look, I grew up in Topeka, Kansas. I went to college. I had a support system in Topeka, Kansas. And guess what happened once I got my college degree and started making a little bit of money? Do you think I went back to the city where I came from? No, I didn't. I moved other places, and that's just a personal decision that I made. But Nipsey did not do that. Nipsey went back and he was about that life. And even though maybe he should have sort of pushed away a little bit, I still, like you said, Erika, you have to give your hats off to him, take your hats off to him, and just commend that brother for what he did. And I just don't know how we're going to heal as a community from this. How do we move forward? I mean, what do you think? How do we move forward?
I think we move forward by continuing to work. I mean, I think that's the only way we can do it. If he had a goal, if he had plans, those close to him need to share the plans, share the goal, continue to work. Like I said, it's got to be so many of us doing the work that we can't say, hey, it's let's target Fred Hampton because he's doing too much good in the black community. There've got to be 20 Fred Hamptons. So if all 20 of us drop, there's no conspiracy. It's obvious. We need to have so many of us doing the work in the community that we like, okay, we're not dependent on this one person to bring us all together. We got to all start feeling responsible for doing our portion of the work. Like I can't do the protests and all that stuff anymore because I got stuff to do. But I put my money there. I'll put my pro bono legal work there. I've represented people. I do my share of the work in the way that's most conducive to what I can do. And everybody, if everybody just does their part and feels responsible for doing a part and everybody does the work, I think we can get there
And,
personally.
and that's really what the Panther movement was about. And we made the comparison between Nipsey and Fred Hampton. Fred said that he was like, "Listen, this is about educating the people because if they take out one person, somebody needs to be ready to just pick up that mantle and continue the mission." And so, what you're saying is exactly right. That's what needs to happen. And yeah, I'm not finna be out and at the front line of the protests. I'm not going to, but I can. Hey, listen, y'all got y'all got arrested. Hey, I can scrounge up that bail money, help get y'all out. Y'all need rides to get here. They don't need, and this goes back to sort of the critique I had of Brother Nipsey. And I hate that it comes off as a critique. We don't need everybody on the front lines. There's people who are young and have youthful exuberance, and there's a time in their life where they can do that. But we also have to stay connected and not be like some of our elders who become detached and become comfortable and look down on the people who are still in that struggle. And Nipsey still wanted to be of the people, and unfortunately, being of the people cost him his life. Being around the people cost him his life. So See, what do you think? I mean, how do we heal from this, and how do we move forward?
I think we heal from it, just like you said. We just got to keep moving forward. I had watched the interview. Well, actually, I think it was I read an article where they asked Nipsey, what happens if he gets killed for doing, the documentary. And one thing he said, or so the article said, I'm not sure. Like I said, don't quote me on it. I don't know if he said it or not, but he said, bury the man, continue the plan. And I think that's just what we have to do, and we've had to do that because we've lost so many other leaders, in the past. And I mean, it's sad to say, but it's nothing new. Black people have always faced adversity, so we just gotta keep going, keep through. But I agree that we don't all need to be on the front line, but at the same time, I think we need that lead. Like we're missing that leadership. As far as Black, American descendants of slaves, like we really don't have anybody leading us right now. And I think he was on his way to being like the next great one. And so it really, it hit the community hard losing him.
Yeah, and I also think that we need to, and we talked about this on a previous show, we need to focus on conflict resolution and dealing with our traumas and dealing with how we interact with each other as American DOS, because there is so much passed down trauma that comes from our condition in the United States. I don't know this man that took Nipsey's life, but obviously there's something incredibly wrong with him in terms of jealousy, whether it be misdirected anger, whether it be envy. But for him to rationalize taking that man's life, taking him from his woman, taking him from his children, taking him away from everybody, there's something wrong with that guy. And unfortunately, we have way too many other young men in our community that are dealing with that exact same thing. So, yeah, I don't want to get on that. Well, what about black on black crime tip that a lot of people do when they try to deflect from addressing the societal issues that we deal with. But I do think we need to address how our young men are dealing with the issues and the pain that they're struggling with being American DOS in this country. I mean, Lav, what do you think, man? I mean, we got to do something for these young men, and I mean, if we got to confront it now, because we're still going to continue to
Yeah,
lose family members, we're still going to continue to lose loved
yeah.
ones, and it's not just Nipsey. All of us have lost somebody.
Nah, everybody, man. And it's multi-layered, man. There's so much that goes into it. Like you said, it's years and years of trauma that a lot of times we don't even think of it as trauma, because it's just part of growing up black or growing up in a certain community. You just think it's normal. And then when you start, if you talk to other people from other neighborhoods or other places, and you're like, man, because I mean, I consider myself to have grown up in a fairly middle class neighborhood, but I mean, man, we probably had 7 or 8 kids while I was in high school alone. They got killed via gun violence, that literally were at my high school. And it's just normal. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just normal. And so you don't necessarily think of it as trauma, but it is something when you talking to somebody on Friday saying, I'll see you Monday, and then you never see that person again. They never return to school, or what have you. So that's one aspect, like you said, is getting help for the traumas that we have, and some of the issues that we have probably can be addressed from that alone. But also, you mentioned Nipsey not being there, didn't have to be on the front line. I think it's the opposite though, because that's what made him so beloved. Because there are a lot of people who are in the background, saying, here goes some bread to this, here goes some bread to that. And I'm thinking in LA, Magic Johnson has invested so much money, but on the street level, I would venture to say Nipsey was probably more beloved than Magic, because he was in the streets with these guys. Magic has more financial investment. He's done more on that side, but you need somebody. Some people are going to have both. Somebody's going to have to be there and be the leader financially. Somebody's going to have to take that role. It's up to us that aren't necessarily there. I think part of the problem is that we leave those people on an island by themselves in that community, right? So if we had not just Nipsey, but if we had three other people who were in the same situation as him, who were back in that same community, that may make a tremendous impact on everybody.
But I think that there's a difference though. So we talked about Jim Brown, right? We talked about Jim Brown before he
Uh huh.
started tripping with Kanye. Jim Brown's still
Uh
in
huh.
the community. That American program, he's dealing with cats that are in the community. Uh,
He's 80 years old though.
he ain't always been 80.
That's a huge
No,
factor.
but listen,
No,
but
but when he was 33, he was more beloved, guaranteed.
I feel that. But the point I'm trying to make though is I'm not no hood dude, and I never have been. But growing up in the
Right.
city that I grew up in, you could not know how to navigate the hood. And I hate that using that term, the hood, but that's all I had.
Right. I know. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know what you mean.
yeah.
I know what you
You cannot, and C can back me up on this. You cannot grow up where I grew up and not know how to navigate the hood because if you did not, you'd be one of those dudes that could never leave the house and you would be ate alive. So I always feel comfortable whether I'm going to Orange Mound in Memphis, Tennessee, the Pork and Beans projects in Miami. If I'm going to the jungle in LA, I'm never going to be afraid of my people because I know how to walk like a man, walk with respect, but more importantly, give respect. Despite what people say, black people are not animals. We're not violent prone. But I think the problem comes into there's a difference between like, hey, lab, let's go down to the neighborhood in Kansas City and let's talk to the kids about X, Y, and Z. And let's see if we can establish some sort of rapport with them and build some type of program. There goes Mr. Lab, there goes Marv B, and they're here to help, as opposed to I'm hanging out with y'all day to day and I'm in the mix because you stopped being a civilian when you were hanging in the mix and you're still doing the things that they do. You get what I'm saying?
I do understand that, but I still think that we with some of the people that we call quote unquote successful need to reinvest and then a lot of times I think that means living in the neighborhoods that they were products of if they want to see that change. It's easy to stand from afar and say it's a shame what's happening over there. It really is. But again, self-preservation is the first law of nature, right? So nobody wants to be in that situation. Everybody's doing what's best for them. And you can't begrudge anybody for that. I mean, if you have a family, you definitely have to look out for your family. But at the same token, there has to be maybe we could do make I don't know a conglomerate of five cats say, hey, we're moving back to our neighborhood. We're gonna start on this block, and see where it goes from there. Then maybe that inspires somebody in another neighborhood to do that.
I just think, like we talked about in the last show, when you have people that have resources, like an athlete or a celebrity, a musician, they may have the resources, but they may not have the savvy to do it to use those resources in the right way. Like how Kaepernick had a number of white attorneys standing behind him when he settled, and Dr. Dre gave all that money to USC. That's because they didn't know any better and they were trying to swim and navigate waters that they weren't familiar with. I think it's the same thing when you try to go to a neighborhood with people who don't know you, or you may have known, but you've kind of outgrown that level. There's still people back there who are in touch with the community, and you can use those resources so that they know, okay, these are the kids we need to try to reach. These are the people that we need to try to reach, and there's a way that we can be more wise with how we use those resources and still get back, but not jeopardize ourselves. Because now that Nipsey's gone, who's going? I mean, who's going to pick up the slack? who,
Right. That's my
yeah,
point though. Is that everybody's looking at Nipsey to do this. Like Nipsey's the only successful person that ever came out of his community, and I would venture to say that's 100% wrong. So why weren't those other people already invested with him or there with him? That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying go to some random community. I'm saying the place you came from, the places you're familiar with, the people you're familiar with. That's where it starts. Because otherwise, you leave the people who we say are quote unquote unsuccessful. And so when you're in that situation where you don't have the financial resources, you don't have this, you don't have that, there's a lot of other issues that'll creep to the forefront. So we need to be leaders and giving back to our communities, probably more so being there. The financial aspect is cool, but that's just the way I feel. I think we just need to be on site. We just do.
yeah, our presence, right. I get that, but I think that there's a difference between Marv and B Lab from the Man Listen show and Nipsey Hussle. I guess that's the only point that I'm trying to
No,
make.
no,
Yeah,
I get you on
yeah,
that. I don't have his influence and things like that, but I'm saying for going forward, that's something we all could look in the mirror
yeah.
for people that aren't Nipsey Hustle and possibly affect.
I would argue that it's not different. So the only difference is that he's achieved a level of notoriety that you haven't achieved yet. But you achieve that level of notoriety by jumping in there and doing the work. So I think that because I know both of you, that if like people were to ask if you were doing work in the community, if you were being a positive influence in the community, everybody that they ask will have a positive response. It's just that because he raps, he has a higher platform, range that he can reach. But I think that we could do the same good works without the notoriety. And I think that the problem is that we keep waiting on people to achieve notoriety to do the good works in the community, as opposed to just relying on the good people in the community, because sometimes that notoriety is a liability. I don't think that if he was lesser known, he would have had as big a target on his back, because good works that he was doing wouldn't have been as known to the whole world. You know what I mean? And so sometimes at a certain point, when you reach that level of notoriety, then you become a target, as opposed to maybe if all of us were just doing good works in our community and maybe just the community know or knew about it, then it would still be great, but we still wouldn't have that type of maybe kind of that watchful eye over us to see what we were doing. But I think that, like you guys were saying, I think it's important to respect the fact that you got to do good works without necessarily always being at the forefront, having everybody easily accessible to you, so that you can put yourselves in a situation that you don't necessarily want to be in, but at the same time you want to be accessible enough to impact the community. And that's a fine line, and it's hard to distinguish how to walk that line.
But I think we have to find that because Nipsey is one of those once in a generation guys, just like Pac was. But both of you are right that we all can do the work, but not all of us can be on that level. And with that level comes something that we need to make this thing, to make what we want happen, and that's capital. That's money. We talk about Sam Cooke. We talked about the two killings of Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke gave back, but he was able to give back because he had the capital. So in that regard, Nipsey was like Sam Cooke. He was more like Sam Cooke and more like Fred Hampton than Tupac to me, because I don't know if Tupac was really giving back in that way. I know he had a big heart, but in terms of like actually giving back, Sam Cooke making opportunities for other people so they could eat. Fred Hampton educating people so that they can lead for themselves and not be oppressed by somebody else who liberated them, going from one oppressor to another. I think that's the role that I would put Nipsey in, but he was more valuable to us as somebody who could bring the resources that we need instead of bringing being the feet on the ground. And that's why I say that he should have had some sort of layer of protection between him and everybody else.
I was gonna say that I like C's quote. What was it? Bury the man, continue to plan. I thought that was
Yeah,
kind of
that was a
dope.
good one. That
So
was a
I
good one. I
read
like
that's
that.
what he said, but I
That's
don't know for sure
amazing
if he
though.
said it or not. I didn't see video.
But if you think about it though, that's that type of iconic quote that kind of inspires a generation, because what are you saying is my message, this plan, this agenda, bigger than me. It's bigger than you. So don't focus on who's giving the message. Focus on the message. And I think that's where we get lost so much as a people. We get lost in, I need Malcolm X. I need Dr. King. I need Fred Hampton. I need Medgar Evans. I need these people to lead me. We don't need them to lead us. We need the message. We need the concept, the ideas, the agenda to motivate us to keep moving forward. And we keep getting lost in the person, and then the government comes in and cuts the head off the person, and then we lost again for 20 years. And then another person comes along and they cut the head off that person. And it's going to take for us to understand that it's bury the man, continue to plan. What's the plan? Investing in the black community, investing in education and ideas that's going to move the DOS agenda forward. That's what we need to focus on. And that's how we honor him. That's how we honor all of them, is by focusing on the plan and continuing the plan. And whatever we got to do that, that's what we got to do to
Well,
honor him.
and you know what? I can't think of a more perfect way to end this show than with what you just said, Arika. And you're absolutely right. The Man Listen Show is about educating our people and doing the work that Brother Nipsey, Brother Fred Hampton were trying to accomplish in terms of educating people so that they're empowered to make better decisions and to be more savvy with the situations that we confront day to day as black people, American DOS in this country. So, with that being said, I want to thank everybody for listening. Make sure you check us out on Facebook. Make sure you check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Man Listen Show. You can listen to the show on iTunes. Please subscribe. You can listen on YouTube. Please subscribe. SoundCloud and Google Play as well. Um, much love and respect to the family of Nipsey Hussle. Praying for a healing, praying for comfort for that family and for everybody else in the country who loved and respected that man and the plan that he had for us and the music that he put out that impacted their lives. So, with that being said, we'll holler at you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.